digital world, I need to talk about the Book of Boba Fett. Now, despite what the title of this video or Spotify episode is, this isn't a review of the new show, The Book of Boba Fett, which just completed its 7-week run on Disney+, because I don't really feel like reviewing it, if that makes sense. I don't really feel like talking about it as a whole. There's just two specific things that I do want to talk about, which I think is relevant to the opinions that I've expressed on this podcast before. It's in conjunction or in defiance of a lot of what goes around in terms of Star Wars fans, Star Wars culture, what Star Wars want and do not want. And it also makes for some content while I wait for some more movies to come out. Welcome everybody to another episode of Spliced In Later. As I have said, we are about to talk about the Book of Boba Fett, the newest Star Wars product, a Star Wars TV show that has been released on Disney+. All 7 episodes are out now after being released on a weekly basis. So if you have been waiting to watch it until it's all out, now is the time. Now, a bit of housekeeping first. Basically, the concept or the issue of Star Wars or whatever you want to get to. Basically, Star Wars. You may wonder why I don't talk about Star Wars very often on this show, on this YouTube channel, on this podcast, however way you are listening to it. I'm into superheroes. I look at all the science fiction stuff. I'm constantly going on about TV shows and movies, both classic and new. Surely Star Wars would come up on here as much as, say, the Marvel Cinematic Universe or even Jackie Chan movies. And there was a time once when, the Star Wars I would have talked about on here, the content would have been up there, if not the most. I loved Star Wars as a kid. I wasn't a diehard Star Wars fan who watched the original trilogy and then watched the prequels and went, this is an affront to Star Wars, I hate it. No, I can happily say that the reason I got into Star Wars was because I was a kid and the prequels were the movies that were being released at the time. I saw The Phantom Menace and went, that was a fun movie. Darth Maul has a double-bladed lightsaber. That Jar Jar Binks, he seems like a funny fellow. This seems fun. And then I got into the rest of it from there, watched the older movies. I enjoyed the prequels. Looking back on them now as an older individual, I can admit, of course, that the quality that went into the storytelling for the prequels is not up to snuff of the original trilogy. But also, I think you can find that very lucky people came together to make the original Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, whereas the prequels was solely a George Lucas thing, and rather it shows an issue with George Lucas's ability to tell storytelling rather than just a affront to one period of Star Wars and the other. It's all there, you just have to look for it. But at the end of the day, they're just movies. It doesn't matter if you think some are really good and some are bad. Not liking something doesn't mean it should affect whether you like something else. I guess that's how it should be. That's how I always believed it when I watched in the old days. And I got very into Star Wars. I knew everything about the original 6 movies. I watched all the TV shows that came out. Mainly they were animated TV shows about the Clone Wars and Rebels and more Clone Wars and all of that stuff as well. And then when George Lucas sold the Star Wars rights to Disney and The Force Awakens came out, I really liked that film too. In fact, I believe it's on my top 10 films of 2015. It's more what Disney has done with Star Wars since acquiring it that has turned off my appetite for it and my taste, which is basically, it can be described as somebody who wins the lottery, who wins $1 million on a lottery ticket, or I guess million's not a lot of money these days, $100 billion, and immediately spends it as fast as they can on every little thing that they can see. They blow all their money. Essentially, Disney blew their Star Wars load all over everybody in a very short period of time, and I think that people got sick of it very quickly. It went from the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy to a sequel trilogy, interspliced with other Star Wars movies about origin stories and spin-off stuff, plus promises. There was going to be a trilogy by James Mangold. There was going to be a trilogy done by the Game of Thrones people. Plus, we're on Disney Plus now, so get ready. All the Star Wars TV shows are coming. They're going to be all over the place. There was a lot of Star Wars promised up front. And then The Last Jedi came out, which brings me back to my early days when I first started this podcast at the end of 2019. I did an episode about The Last Jedi in preparation for The Rise of Skywalker coming out, where I defended it. I understand why people don't like it. That's okay. I appreciated The Last Jedi, I think, because it tried to do something different. Its ideas may have been grander than its execution, but it's something different. It's something Star Wars hadn't really done before. Maybe not competently, but it was certainly a new direction, which was a good way to go, I think, rather than just rehashing the same. As great as The Force Awakens is, it is just A New Hope done again. But of course, Star Wars fans everywhere didn't like The Last Jedi. It was too different. They want the same shit over and over again. They want Jedis, Sith, Empire, Rebels, Death Star, funny droids, all of that stuff. They don't want... They certainly don't want any films that suggest that Luke Skywalker is a grumpy old man who actually rejects the Jedi teachings. No, none of that. Whatever, I'm not getting into that. You've got a whole episode you can listen into that. But rather than stick with the plan, or as they revealed, there is no plan. Each director who got a hold of each sequel trilogy just went, I'm going to do my own thing. So Rian Johnson, in Disney's eyes, failed. So they bring back J.J. Abrams because The Force Awakens was popular and said, right, now do The Rise of Skywalker and do it so everybody likes us. Find what people like about Star Wars and do that. So he found about 500 or 600 things that people like about Star Wars, pushed it all into a movie. And unfortunately, my second Star Wars episode where I reviewed The Rise of Skywalker, I hate it. And I don't hate it because I'm a grumpy Gus. It's an unwatchable movie for me because it's just such a mess. There's so much crammed into it. None of it makes sense. It flies by so fast you don't have a chance to catch your breath. Characters have arcs or don't have arcs that make any sense, sort of thing, and then it just sort of wraps itself up. You cannot go back and watch the sequel trilogy and feel like you are watching a cohesive story. It's like 3 separate ideas mashed together, which in the end don't lead you anywhere. And the disappointment, unfortunately, irradiates because whereas a prequel trilogy, okay, if you don't like the prequels, you don't have to watch them. You can just watch the original in the middle. A sequel trilogy, it's taking the ideas and the stories that ended the Star Wars trilogy and saying, oh, there's more to say. And a lot of what happens in this trilogy negates Darth Vader's sacrifice or redemption or whatever in the original trilogy. At least with the prequels in the original trilogy, my God, you can at least say that it documents the story of Anakin Skywalker, the arrival on the scene, his rise in the Jedi, his fall to the dark side, his tyrannical rule, and his eventual redemption. To put these 3 films on the end and then just call the last one The Rise of Skywalker and say that Rey decides to be a Skywalker by the end of it does not end the Skywalker saga. It's an epilogue story which doesn't work. It'd be like if Toy Story 4 said it was the pivotal end to the Toy Story franchise but blue. It doesn't have to be watched. You can be happy with Toy Story 3, but Toy Story 4 is a last little neat cherry on top of the situation. The sequel trilogy and The Rise of Skywalker are just these big messy things that have just grasped on to Star Wars. Anyway, that's just my opinion as well. I know I started this episode by saying you can like something and don't let the fact that you dislike something affect your opinion of things. And I will say that I have not changed my opinion on Star Wars before this point. I really like the original trilogy, greatest films ever. Prequel trilogy, I do enjoy the Clone Wars TV series, the Rebels TV series. It's all a lot of fun. It's just the way the sequel trilogy crashed and burned, aside from all the promises of, oh, but we're making a Rogue One, we're making a Solo. It was just too much. Now, my third and final Star Wars episode, I did a review of The Mandalorian, which had started airing on Disney+. To be fair, I only reviewed it after the first 4 episodes, but I did say that it was a breath of fresh air. I really liked it. I was enjoying the concept that The Mandalorian stepped away from this hole that Star Wars seemed to have dug it in. I've seen online on YouTube a very perfect analogy, which is that Star Wars is set a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. A galaxy. But for some reason, this gigantic galaxy with all these planets and systems, the only thing that seems to go on in this galaxy is the Empire. Rebellion versus Empire. Jedi versus Sith. Droids and scavengers and bounty hunters all on the same few planets going from point A to point B. There's a vast galaxy. There should be so many places you can pull different stories from. There shouldn't be a feel that it all has to feel the same. Can you imagine if our galaxy that Earth exists in and every other planet out there was just like Earth but a little different, and they had the same laws and the same attitudes and the same governing systems? That would suck. But Star Wars seems to always be. It's just Empire, Sith, Jedi. It's these 3 things. We must have them in every movie. We must have them in every TV show. We must. The fans demand it. We cannot tell a story without these things in it. The Mandalorian was a breath of fresh air because it was set, immediately after Return of the Jedi or thereabouts, well before the sequel trilogy. There was no Empire anymore, and though you can see hints of that world in the backdrop, it was a brand new character, the Mandalorian. It was a brand new setup of him just taking a young child called Grogu under his wing and just traveling the galaxy, going from planet to planet, just trying to keep off the radar, to keep these kids safe. Encountering things that have not been encountered in mainstream Star Wars stories before, whether he's stuck in an ice cave being overrun by spiders, or he's attempting a jailbreak on some space station a million miles from any known planet. It was good. Mandalorian was a great character. There was a lot of intrigue about him. There was some good lore that was being built on, which I guess was sort of there in the expanded Star Wars canon, but I don't have time for all of that. It was good to experience it in this new way. But I was cautious, and my opinions were proven right, where by the end of Season 2 of The Mandalorian, it became The Mandalorian show featuring the guest character of the week who will allude to their own TV show. Season 2 of The Mandalorian became just that. Each episode, here's a character. They're going to have their own TV show. So we won't resolve their story. You'll have to watch this other show to find out what's going on here. Here's another legacy character. Here's another legacy character. Remember this character? Whoa. They may be an original character to the Mandalorian story, but don't worry, they're not sticking around because they're going to have their own TV show. Culminating in a finale where I was very annoyed with the legacy character that they pulled out of the very famous Star Wars lore to show up and just say some lines so people can go, oh, it's that guy. I know who that is. I know him. I remember Star Wars. So it made me disappointed. And then I look online and everybody's just like, oh my God, it's the greatest show ever. Look at all these characters coming back. And I get it. I understand that. But I was enjoying having my own little Star Wars show that was embracing change and going in new directions and keeping the story not about fan service and cameos and references. And it disappeared, which is why I didn't review The Mandalorian Season 2 and why I haven't really felt like talking about Star Wars in the 2 years I've been running this podcast. I don't feel like talking about the original films. I don't feel like talking about any of the spin-offs that have been announced or anything like that because it just doesn't thrill me. But the reason I'm talking about the Book of Boba Fett, the Book of Boba Fett stems off the cameo-filled extravaganza that is Season 2 of The Mandalorian. Boba Fett, a very popular character among Star Wars fans for reasons that are stupid, popped up towards the end of that, and then the post-credit scene for The Mandalorian Season 2 was Boba Fett's getting his own TV show called The Book of Boba Fett, which also annoyed me, which we'll get into. But I do want to talk about it. There's some positives coming up here, don't worry. There's not really any negatives, I think, which is nice. There's just befuddlement, but it's not really befuddlement because having just described how we got to here, I think I've answered my own question, but we'll get into it now. Without going into the plot of the Book of Boba Fett, it's hard really when you review, well not really review, but when you talk about a TV show because it's a thing that's meant to be experienced on a episodically basic thing, and obviously the earlier episodes don't have much going on. I don't want to talk about anything in it to potentially spoil things if people do want this. There's one thing I will spoil, which I don't think is a huge spoil. It's more just a fact at this point. But if you are worried, feel free to leave now and come back and listen to the episode once you've seen the show. But basically, the Book of Boba Fett is about Boba Fett after he has blasted out of the Sarlacc pit, where he very unceremoniously ended up during his fight with Jabba the Hutt and Han Solo and all of that in Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. He fell into the Sarlacc pit where he should have been, digested for 1,000 years. But I guess in 10 years, I don't know how much time has passed, he manages to blast his way out. The story then is on two fronts. It's in flashbacks, which shows what happened to Boba immediately after getting out of the Sarlacc pit and how he survived, plus present day, which is set after the Season 2 of Mandalorian ended, where Boba has returned to Tatooine and has usurped Jabba the Hutt's old throne with his number one sidekick, Fennec Shan, played by Ming-Na Wen. And they essentially try to rule Mos Espa as the daimyo, which I guess isn't crime. He's not trying to be a crime lord here. He's trying to be a governing power. The Boba Fett here in the present day seems to be taking trying to change, if he ever was different, to be more honorable, to be respected as a powerful being, but also to help the less fortunate, to uproot all the evil powers, because as he says once in one episode, he's tired of working for the wrong people to do the wrong thing, sort of. course, nobody likes this. Most of the people on Tatooine are fine doing their own thing. They've got their own power. Boba Fett showing up, they're not okay with. They push back at every instance. I mean, this guy just basically showed up and said, I'm in charge now. And they go, well, no, you're not yet. I'm in charge at the moment. And then it's a back and forth there. The show goes off the rails, which we'll get into in a minute. And then somehow, though, manages to end in a relatively satisfying way for me specifically. Now, the things we're going to talk about. Number one, Boba Fett, the character of Boba Fett, the love for Boba Fett, or the hate of Boba Fett of this show, depending on where you are. I have never liked Boba Fett. I don't know if that's something that will make people angry. I assume it will. Every time I do talk about Star Wars, it's the videos on YouTube that get the most dislikes. I've never understood it. I get the appeal of Boba Fett in his design. He does look cool, and his presence in The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi is menacing, because he is the bounty hunter that captured Han Solo when no one else could. He's the one who took him to Jabba the Hutt. He's the reason that there was a cliffhanger between episodes 5 and 6. But there has always been this opinion of him that he's the most badass guy who ever lived, and he's a heartless killer who hunts people down with no mercy, destroys anyone in his way, absolutely untouchable, and is just, as a result, the coolest, most badass character in all of Star Wars. I hate that, because that is not character development. That is people who look at his design and decided that's who he is. Now, I've not gone and looked through all the hundreds and hundreds of expanded shit, which apparently isn't even canon anymore. I've not read the Boba Fett books, if there are any. I've not seen any comics or anything like that. I'm going on what Star Wars has presented me in canon. And all we know about Boba Fett is seeing him as a child in episode 2, when his much cooler father, Jango Fett, was wiped out. And that's an annoying thing. Jango Fett and Boba Fett are two different characters. Jango Fett has the reputation that everybody has assigned to Boba Fett, because he actually does that shit in Attack of the Clones. Not Boba Fett, but anyway, whatever, doesn't matter. After that, he's not seen again. I mean, he pops up in Clone Wars as a kid. He's got a vendetta against Mace Windu. But then he is just in the original series, and he was originally designed as just a minion. George Lucas said that. He's just a cool-looking minion for Jabba the Hutt. Yes, Darth Vader tells him no disintegrations. What does that mean? We don't know, because we don't know who he is as a character. He has no character development. He has no growth. He is just there as a plot device to get Han Solo from point A to point B. And then in episode 6, Return of the Jedi, he has a really punk death. For someone who's so badass and cool, he gets surprised and has his jetpack accidentally hit by a blind Han Solo who didn't even know what he was doing, crashes and falls into the Sarlacc pit, and that's the end of Boba Fett. Now, people have decided, of course, that he's this badass person. Whatever, people can believe what they want, but I've never been one to agree with them. But I've assumed that people who make Star Wars have agreed with the fans. You watch the special editions, George Lucas has made a habit of inserting Boba Fett into scenes because he's cool. He's a ladies' man or whatever, I don't know. But that's why I wasn't keen for a Boba Fett TV show, because there's nothing there for the character. Just being a badass is not a character. It is cool that Tamura Morrison is playing him, because Tamura Morrison is a cool guy and he's a good actor. So that's the reason why I watched it for him, because it did look like he was invested in the character. And The Mandalorian Season 2, even though it was annoying, his fleeting appearances left me going, okay, how did he get to here? I do kind of want to know. I don't really care that much, but I got nothing else to do. I may as well see. What I was pleasantly surprised by in the Book of Boba Fett is that for the first 4 episodes at least, it made a point of going, oh yeah, Boba Fett doesn't have a character. Let's give him one. Let's give him some character development. Let's put a lot of Tamura Morrison's personality into Boba Fett, a lot of his appreciation for Maori culture and stuff like that. He's got a sense of humor. You can tell that he may have been a badass or a heartless killer. It may have been, but his near-death experience in the Sarlacc pit has changed his outlook on life and his opinion of the world and how he wants to leave his impact on it. He forms a very strong bond with some Tusken Raiders. He's got a ride or die relationship with Fennec Shan. He is always sticking his neck out for helpful people, for people in need. He's reasonable. He trusts people. Sometimes he trusts people too much. He is merciful, and he's fun. He's an interesting character now. There's a lot more going on behind that mask. But as I was watching these first 4 episodes and I'm going, okay, all right, I'm liking this show because of this character development for Boba Fett. I go online and everyone's going, what is this Boba Fett? He's so boring. He's so lame. He's making jokes. Boba Fett never made jokes. He's cracking wires. He's being hoodwinked. Boba Fett's a killer. You cannot just decide that a character is a character without getting that development. Now we are getting it, and it's not the one you've just decided was Boba Fett for all those years, and as a result, the show sucks because of that. You suck, essentially. I read 2 very annoying things. One was someone complaining that Boba Fett takes his helmet off too much, and it's like, he doesn't do that. He's a badass. You gotta keep his helmet on. That's not a character to have your helmet on to be cool. That's not anything to do with development. If you want to watch a character not take their helmet off, go watch The Mandalorian. At least there's some character development for that. But The Mandalorian and Boba Fett are not the same character. And second of all, the complaints that Tamura Morrison's heritage was bleeding into the character of Boba Fett and thereby ruining the character, which are out there, you don't have to go hard to find them, but people are just kicking the shit up just because they assume Boba Fett to be this thing. And it's insensitive to go, Tamura Morrison's Maori heritage has no place in my Boba Fett. It's like, Tamura Morrison won the part. It's his character. He's developing it. That's how the character is. Get over yourself. Long story short, I really, really enjoyed the first half of the Book of Boba Fett because of the development of the character Boba Fett, which had not happened before and was strangely, oddly satisfying. It's almost like Jon Favreau knows how to tell good Star Wars stories when he doesn't have to stack in references and legacy characters and all of that stuff. Which brings me to my second point. What the fuck happened with the last half of the show? It stopped being the Boba Fett show. It became the Star Wars legacy character show featuring Boba Fett. Episode 5 Boba Fett does not appear in. It becomes an episode of Season 3 of The Mandalorian. I could not believe it while I was watching it. It was fun to see Mandalorian back. He is a great character and I enjoy watching his stuff. But it really felt like they had just taken an episode from Season 3 and accidentally released it in the Book of Boba Fett. It's only right towards the end where Fennec Shand shows up and says, oh, Boba Fett needs your help. That you go, oh, okay. So the Mandalorian's going to help Boba Fett out for the last few episodes of the show. Okay. Why did we need a full 50-minute episode of a Mandalorian story just to put him in the right position for that? For a show that's only got 7 episodes, that's a huge detour, that's what I'm looking for. Whatever. It might be one of those things where, I mean, shows have done that in the past. You watch like Star Trek, Stargate, even NCIS, they always might have an episode where they just do something completely different. The difference with those shows is they have anywhere between 22 to 26 episodes. So they got to fill those episodes. They may as well have one where you see a whole world from Captain Kirk's perspective if he was in a mirror universe or something that has absolutely no relevance on the continuing arc plot, whatever. But Boba Fett only has 7 episodes and you're going to donate an entire episode, not even about him, but just to a Mandalorian season episode. That was strange. But I thought, okay, I'll allow that. Then season 6 was a joke. Not season 6. Episode 6 was a joke. Boba Fett showed up for 15 seconds. He had 1 line of dialogue. The rest of the episode was again mostly about the Mandalorian, but then you checked in with what Grogu was doing, and you checked in with what Cobb Vanth was doing, and even more legacy characters popped up into this one episode. And one whole storyline has absolutely nothing to do with Boba Fett's storyline. It's just sort of there. And that's when you realize, okay, next week is the final episode of the Book of Boba Fett, and I'm forgetting about Boba Fett. What was he doing? What's his goals? What did he want to have achieved by the end of this show? I don't know. But then I go online, and everybody's saying that these are 2 of the greatest episodes of the Book of Boba Fett we've ever had. Okay, 1, we're only in our first season. It's not like you've got to sift through 50 episodes to have the greatest episodes you've ever had. But 2, your favorite episodes of the Book of Boba Fett are the ones that aren't even about Boba Fett? It is a reflection of Star Wars fans and Star Wars culture as a whole that storytelling and character development and substance are not entertaining. What we want is 50 characters that we remember to show up in an episode so we can go, wow, remember that character? I do, because I like Star Wars. Jesus Christ. Happily, though, I will say that the last episode of Boba Fett finally took it back to Boba Fett and somehow managed to take a lot of these plot points, even ones that had detoured extravagantly, into what I would say is a satisfactory enough ending. But even then, that last episode, it still didn't know if it was a Boba Fett story or a Mandalorian story. Boba Fett at least got to do stuff in it, but there was so much Mandalorian stuff as well. And that is both satisfactory and absolutely mind-boggling. What's the point of this episode? Because I really don't want to talk about this anymore. I think the Book of Boba Fett is weird. It is a perfect example of Star Wars culture, Star Wars fans, Star Wars direction. It really showcases in its own little bubble how it has the potential to have really good ideas and direction and storytelling and to do something new and interesting, but that it also will always fall into that trap of just referencing the same characters, going to the same place, doing the same thing over and over again. It's not confident enough to try something new, but it's not good enough to keep referencing things and have it be satisfactory. I know an Obi-Wan Kenobi show is coming at the end of May. I'd like to be excited for it, but Star Wars is just tiring for me. And I don't... look, Ewan McGregor is great. And you know me. My regular listeners who know me in person know that it doesn't matter if I love or hate something. I will watch these things because I have no choice. I'm obsessive compulsive like that. But I'm not excited for it. I'm not anticipating it. I might have been if Boba Fett had managed to stick with what I thought was good, but it's completely all over the place. And Obi-Wan Kenobi is only a limited series and only has a few amount of episodes. Is it going to actually do something different, or is it just going to be Obi-Wan Kenobi? You know him. He's that character. The fact that they're so focused on Hayden Christensen as coming back as Darth Vader. I mean, from the lore we have of Star Wars, Obi-Wan went into hiding for 19 years. It was his exile for failing. What is he going to do? Does he go on an adventure or does he have flashbacks? I'm not sure what the content and the substance of the show will be, but I'm apprehensive. My final thoughts are, the Book of Boba Fett is very quality, entertaining TV show. I think it's a good reflection of how movies and TV show, it's getting harder and harder to distinguish between the two. The content, the production value, it looks incredible. It looks like a Star Wars movie just as a TV show. And I am appreciative of the show because I have a new respect for Boba Fett. Now I know about him as a character and Tamora Morrison's connection to him. But it's also an absolute mess that I really don't know if they'll come back for a season 2 or what they'll do with season 3 of The Mandalorian after basically telling his story on a different show and all the other shows that are being promised. It's just all over the place. But again, everyone has to make up their own mind. So whatever, ignore me and everything I just said for the last 28 minutes. Go watch it and make up your own mind. There you are. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that was entertaining and not a waste of time. I will be back next week for maybe a movie review. I think I'm going to see a movie that I couldn't care less about. So that might be fun to review something that I have no investment in, because it's like Mortal Kombat, I had the same attitude towards, and it ended up being one of the greatest movies of 2021. So we'll just have to wait and see. But be sure to check in next week for that one. Until then, though, I love and appreciate you as always. Stay safe, stay kind to one another. You've been spliced in later. Adios, muchachos. I'll catch you next time.